He, a skeptical tycoon, seeks genuine goodness through a social experiment involving 4 women. She, a discreet cleaning lady, isn't part of the test. One of the tested women sabotages the office. Seeing this, Claire acts with honesty. Julian, observing, witnesses her courage and integrity. In that instant, the millionaire falls in love. The cleaning lady, outside the test, possesses the soul he was searching for. Prepare for a twist where a social experiment becomes love, and high society will try to expose the cleaning lady. But the strength of this love and her integrity may break down barriers. Watch this story to the end. You'll be amazed. If you enjoy stories of love and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing, the alarm clock rang at 4:30 in the morning as usual. Claire Alencar reached out her slender arm to silence the cheap device, her calloused fingers finding the button in the dark. She didn't need light to navigate the small room she shared with her younger sister in a low-income neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. Every inch of that cramped space was familiar territory, mapped out by years of inflexible routine. 28 years old, and Claire still rose as her mother had before she died, in silence so as not to wake anyone. The difference was that now she carried the weight of supporting the family that remained, alone. 16-year-old Fernanda was still sound asleep, her school books scattered at the foot of the bed. Claire smiled at her sister, even in the dim light. At least one of the Alencar sisters would finish her studies. In the tiny bathroom, Claire looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Brown hair pulled back in a simple bun, a face already showing signs of fatigue despite her age. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would attract attention. Exactly as it needed to be. Invisible cleaning ladies lasted longer on the job. 2 hours later, Claire got off the crowded bus downtown, her legs aching from the ride. Before her rose the Vance Technology Complex, 30 stories of glass and steel reflecting the gray morning sky. For 3 years, she had cleaned those offices. 3 years passing unnoticed through corridors where men and women in suits decided the future of thousands of people. At the same moment, 40 floors above, Julian Vance woke up in his master suite with a panoramic view of the city. At 42, he possessed everything money could buy. The 6,000-square-foot penthouse on the Gold Coast, imported cars, private jets, political influence. His company was worth billions. His philanthropic investments transformed lives in distant countries. But Julian woke up, as always, with a feeling of emptiness in his chest. He sat on the edge of the king-size bed, his bare feet touching the cold marble floor. Outside the room, the mansion stretched out empty like a museum. Discreet servants maintained the property but avoided disturbing him. He knew they saw him as a distant, perhaps intimidating boss. He wasn't wrong. His cell phone vibrated with the first messages of the day. His assistant, Marcus, confirming his schedule. Meetings, reports, decisions that would move millions. No personal messages. Julian didn't expect any. It was his birthday, 43 years old today, and for the first time in decades, the date wasn't officially on his agenda. He had discreetly instructed Marcus not to organize anything. In recent years, corporate celebrations had become empty performances, employees forced to smile, perfunctory toasts, expensive gifts without meaning. He preferred honest silence to festive hypocrisy. In the bathroom mirror of his suite, Julian saw the same man he faced every day, graying hair at the temples, dark eyes that intimidated in meetings, a firm jaw that never showed hesitation. A face that graced the covers of business magazines, that inspired respect and envy in equal measure. A completely lonely face. 2 hours later, Claire pushed her cleaning cart through the corridors of the 40th floor, the heart of Vance Technology. Her canvas sneakers made as little noise as possible on the granite floor. She knew the CEO would arrive early, as usual, and preferred to finish cleaning his office before he did. She passed the luxurious reception area, where white orchids were replaced 3 times a week, the glass-walled offices of the directors, until she reached the double wooden doors that gave access to Julian Vance's office. Her access card worked with a soft beep. The office, was the size of the apartment where Claire had grown up. Huge windows offered a view of all of Chicago. A library occupied an entire wall, and the furniture seemed straight out of a decorating magazine. But Claire, with her 3 years cleaning that environment, had learned to see beyond the opulence. On the desk, always impeccable, she noticed a detail that others would ignore. A desk calendar turned upside down, as if it had been deliberately hidden. Curious, Claire straightened it and saw the date marked with a discreet red circle. March 15th. Today, her heart ached. No festive decorations, no gifts in sight. Just a marked calendar hidden like a shameful secret. Claire knew that loneliness. She had grown up watching her father mark important dates that no one else remembered, had seen her mother hide her sadness when birthdays went unnoticed. She knew how the indifference of the world could hurt, even when one tried to pretend it didn't matter. Throughout the morning, while she cleaned, Claire observed Julian Vance through the glass walls. He worked as always, focused, efficient, but there was something in his gestures, an extra rigidity in his shoulders that she recognized. It was the way someone behaved when trying very hard to ignore something. When her shift ended, Claire should have left. She should have taken the bus back home, prepared dinner for Fernanda, corrected her sister's homework. But she couldn't. In the small park in front of the building, she sat on a bench and thought. She didn't have money for expensive gifts. She didn't know the CEO's refined tastes. But she had something she had learned from her mother, the power of a simple gesture made with care. When she returned to the building for the night shift, Claire carried a small box wrapped in cheap but carefully done gift wrap. Inside, a homemade brownie she had made with the last ingredients she had at home, and a handwritten note with her careful handwriting. For Mr. Vance, who, even though he has everything, may need to remember that someone cares. Happy birthday, Claire, from cleaning. She left the gift in the center of the impeccable desk, her heart beating fast. She knew she could be fired for this, that she was crossing all the invisible barriers that separated her world from his. But some things were more important than protocols. Julian arrived at the office the next morning, carrying the familiar weight of another ignored birthday. Family had sent generic WhatsApp messages, his younger brother from overseas, his sister too busy with her own problems to call. Some perfunctory corporate congratulations arrived by email from business partners who probably had assistants tracking these dates. But as he opened the door to his office, Julian stopped. In the center of his desk, where there was never anything out of place, was a small box wrapped in colorful paper with a handmade yellow bow. Next to it, a simple envelope with his name written in careful handwriting. Julian's heart raced with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine surprise. He picked up the envelope first, his hands trembling imperceptibly. Inside, a note on plain paper, but the words written with a sincerity that hit him like a punch in the chest. Claire from cleaning. He knew the name. It was on the list of outsourced employees he reviewed monthly. But he had never really seen her. With unusual care for a man accustomed to tearing open corporate envelopes, Julian opened the gift. The homemade brownie was wrapped in plastic wrap, still with the sweet and comforting smell that he vaguely remembered from a childhood he preferred to forget. He sat heavily in his executive chair, the small treat in his hands. When was the last time someone had cooked something especially for him? When was the last time a gift had been chosen, prepared, delivered without expectation of return? Julian bit into the brownie. It was simple, homemade, made with cheap ingredients. But it had something that his meals from Michelin-starred restaurants never had: care. Throughout the morning, he couldn't concentrate. Between meetings and reports, his eyes kept returning to the note on the table. Someone cares. The words echoed in his mind with a disturbing force. A cleaning lady, someone he had probably passed 1,000 times without seeing, had noticed something that his own family had ignored. In the afternoon, Julian did something he had never done in 20 years of his career. He cancelled his last meetings and went down to the Human Resources Department. "I need the details of an outsourced employee," he said to Regina, the HR supervisor, trying to maintain a casual tone. "Claire." Last name Alencar, I believe. Regina looked at him in surprise. Julian Vance never got involved with support staff issues. Is there a problem, Mr. Vance? No, just a routine check. When the file arrived, Julian discovered more about Claire in 5 minutes than he knew about most people in his life. 28 years old, worked the night shift for 3 years. 0 absences, 0 complaints. Address in a low-income neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. Salary that barely covered basic needs. And yet, she had spent money she didn't have to buy ingredients and make a gift for a stranger. That night, Julian did something even more unprecedented. He stayed late at the office, waiting for the cleaning shift to begin. Claire arrived at 8 o'clock in the evening as usual, but her heart was pounding. She had spent the entire day wondering if she would be fired, if she had made a terrible mistake in daring to cross the invisible line between her world and the CEO's. She was pushing the cleaning. Got down the hall when she saw the light on in Mr. Vance's office. Strange. He never stayed this late. She hesitated at the door. Maybe she should come back later when he left. But then she heard his voice. Claire, can you come in, please? Her legs trembled. She left the cart outside and entered, keeping her eyes down, her hands clasped in front of her body. Mr. Vance, if it was about the gift, I can explain. Look at me. The voice was gentle, but Claire still hesitated before raising her eyes. Julian was standing behind the desk, his jacket removed, his tie loosened. He seemed different under the soft light of the room, less intimidating. Thank you, he said simply. Claire blinked, confused. Sir, for the gift, for the brownie, for remembering. Julian took a few steps towards her and Claire instinctively recoiled. He stopped immediately. How long have you worked here? 3 years, sir, and I've never seen you before. It wasn't a question, but Claire answered anyway. I work at night, sir. I try not to bother. Bother? Julian repeated the word as if it were foreign. You don't bother me, Claire. You saved me. Claire's eyes widened. Sir, that was the first real birthday present I've received in, I can't remember how many years. The silence that followed was charged with a strange tension. Claire felt exposed, vulnerable under Julian's intense gaze. And he, for the first time in decades, felt seen by someone. I need to ask you something, Julian continued, his voice lower. Why, you don't know me. I'm just your boss. Claire swallowed hard. My mother used to say that everyone needs to know that someone cares, especially when they pretend they don't need to. And you thought I was pretending? I saw the marked calendar, sir, and I saw how you hid it. The observation hit Julian like a slap. This woman, this cleaning lady he had never noticed, had read him better than people who had known him for decades. Claire, he began, but didn't know how to continue. How to explain that a simple gesture had cracked a wall he had built around his heart for years. How to say that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her all day. The phone rang, cutting the moment. Julian answered automatically, but his eyes remained on Claire. Mr. Vance? It's Marcus. Your sister's trying to reach you urgently. Something about a family emergency. Julian closed his eyes, annoyed. Put her through. Claire took advantage of the distraction to move discreetly towards the door, but Julian raised his hand, asking her to wait. The conversation was brief and tense. When he hung up, Julian looked exhausted. Family problems, he explained, more to himself than to Claire. My sister needs money. Again. She says it's an emergency, but for her, everything is an emergency when she wants something. Claire hesitated, but something in his expression made her speak. I'm sorry, sir. Why? You have nothing to do with it, but you're sad. That's enough. Julian stared at her for a long moment. Here was a woman who barely knew him, worried about his feelings. While his own family... Claire, can I ask you a personal question? She nodded nervously. Do you have family? I have a sister, sir, Fernanda. She's 16 years old. And your parents? They died when I was 22, so you take care of her alone. Yes, sir. Claire's voice was almost a whisper. Julian felt something stir in his chest. This woman carried responsibilities he could barely imagine, with a salary that was less than he spent on a single meal. And yet, she had found the time, energy, and resources to care for a lonely stranger. "Are you finished with your work here?" he asked suddenly. Claire looked around, confused. "Not yet, sir. I need to clean your office and forget about it for today." Julian picked up his jacket. "Come with me." "Sir, I don't understand. You gave me a gift. Now it's my turn." Claire took a step back. "Mr. Vance, I can't. It wouldn't be appropriate." "Why not?" The simple question carried enormous weight. Claire looked at the man in front of her, powerful, rich, influential, and then at herself, a cleaning lady from a low-income neighborhood with simple clothes and calloused hands. "Because we're from different worlds," she said finally. "You are you, and you're not just anything." Julian's voice had a firmness that silenced her. "You're the person who reminded me that I'm still human." The phone rang again, but this time Julian ignored it. His eyes remained fixed on Claire, waiting for an answer. "I can't, sir," she said finally, her voice breaking slightly. "I need my job." And with that, she left the room before he could respond, leaving Julian alone with the echo of her words and a desperate need to find a way to see her again. In the next 3 days, Julian found himself creating excuses to pass through the floors where Claire worked. He arrived earlier, left later, always hoping for a glimpse of the woman who had turned his world upside down. But Claire seemed to have become even more invisible, avoiding any possibility of encounter. Marcus noticed the change in his boss's behavior. "Mr. Vance, you've seemed different. Is everything all right?" Julian just muttered a vague response, but the truth was that he wasn't all right. For the first time in years, someone had awakened something in him beyond professional interest or social obligation, and she was running away from him. It was on Thursday that fate forced the situation. Claire was cleaning the executive bathroom on the 30th floor when her cell phone rang. She hesitated before answering. Calls during work were discouraged. "Claire?" Fernanda's voice sounded strange, tense. "Well, what's wrong?" "Shouldn't you be at school?" "Claire, I need to talk to you. It's about school." Claire's heart plummeted. "What happened?" "They want to expel me." Claire leaned against the sink, her legs weak. "Expel you? Why?" "Because of the overdue tuition and other things." Fernanda's voice was broken. "Claire, I messed up really bad. Where are you?" "At school. The principal wants to talk to you today, now." Claire looked at the clock. 2 in the afternoon. Her shift wouldn't end until 6, but Fernanda was absolute priority. Always had been. "Stay there. I'm coming." Claire put away the cleaning supplies in a hurry and went to find Mrs. Marta, the cleaning team's supervisor. "I need to leave early today," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's a family emergency." Mrs. Marta looked at her suspiciously. "Claire, you know we can't abandon the service. If the company staff complains..." "Please, Mrs. Marta, it's about my sister." "Look, I understand, but the rules are clear. If you leave now, you can forget today's pay. And if it becomes a habit..." Claire closed her eyes. "A day's pay would be missed, but Fernanda would be a loss that could never be repaired." "I understand," she said simply. That's when Julian appeared in the doorway of the supply closet. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Mrs. Marta. "I need Claire for a special task, urgent." Mrs. Marta straightened up immediately, intimidated by the CEO's presence. "Of course, Mr. Vance, Claire is at your disposal." Julian turned to Claire, who looked at him with a mixture of confusion and panic. "Come with me," he said simply. Claire followed him in silence to the elevator, her heart beating erratically. When the doors closed, Julian pressed the ground floor button. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "You need to go to your sister's school, don't you?" Claire stared at him, shocked. "How did you..." "I overheard your conversation. Not on purpose," he added quickly. "But I was passing by the hallway. Mr. Vance, I can't accept that you..." "Claire." His voice was gentle but firm. "Let me help." In the underground parking garage, Julian guided her to a discreet black BMW. Claire hesitated at the passenger door. "This isn't right," she murmured. People will think what? That a boss is helping an employee in a family emergency." Julian opened the door for her. That's called human decency, Claire. It should be normal. During the drive to the low-income neighborhood, they remained silent. Julian discreetly watched Claire, noticing how she bit her lower lip when nervous, how her hands trembled slightly in her lap. She watched the city pass by the window, trying to process the unreality of the situation. "Can you tell me what happened?" Julian asked softly when they stopped in traffic. Claire hesitated, but something in his voice made her speak. "Fernanda is a good girl. Always has been. But since our mother died, she changed. She gets angry with me for working so much, says I sacrificed my life for her. I think she feels guilty. And your father? He died when she was 11 years old. Cancer. We spent all our savings trying to save him." Claire swallowed hard. "Fernanda is smart. She could go to college, have a better life. But school is expensive, and you do what you can. I do what needs to be done." Julian nodded, but something in his own throat was tight. "I understand perfectly." Claire looked at him curiously. "Sir?" Julian hesitated. He never talked about his past, especially not the real version. But something about Claire made him want to be honest. "I also lost my parents young," he said finally. "My sister was 13 when our mother died. I was 17. Claire turned completely to him, surprised. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Nobody knows. It's not part of the official company biography." Julian smiled bitterly. "The official version is that I founded the company with a family inheritance. The truth is more complicated. They arrived at the school before Claire could ask more, but the seed of curiosity was planted. Who was Julian Vance, really? And why did he seem to understand her pain so deeply? The meeting at the school was as bad as Claire had expected. Fernanda had gotten involved with a group of classmates who were selling fake schoolwork. When they were discovered, she tried to take all the blame to protect the others. The principal was willing not to expel her, but there were conditions: immediate payment of overdue tuition, plus a fine, plus paid tutoring. $5,000, said Claire when they left the school, her voice empty. "Where am I going to get $5,000? Julian, who had waited in the car, saw the two sisters walking slowly towards him. Claire seemed to have aged years in an hour. Fernanda, a younger version of Claire, but with more fire in her eyes, walked with her head down. "How did it go?" he asked when they approached. Claire didn't answer. Fernanda looked him directly in the eyes, defiant despite the tears. "You're my sister's boss?" "Fernanda!" Claire protested. "I am," Julian replied calmly. "Then you know she works like a dog to keep me in school. And I ruined everything. Fernanda, stop it." But the teenager continued. "She never talks, but I know she canceled college because of me. I know she doesn't date anyone because she doesn't have time. I know she eats less so I can eat more." The tears were falling freely now. "And I'm an idiot who only causes trouble." Julian looked at Claire, who was trying to comfort her sister, and felt something break inside his chest. Here was a woman who had sacrificed everything for love without ever complaining or victimizing herself. "How much do you need?" he asked softly. "No," said Claire immediately. "Mr. Vance, we can't. It's not charity, Claire. It's an investment." "In what?" Julian looked at Fernanda, then at Claire. "In people who know the value of sacrifices. In people who understand responsibility. In people like I used to be." The words came out before he could censor them, revealing more than he intended. Claire stared at him, and for the first time saw beyond the facade of the billionaire. She saw a man who also knew the pain of carrying the world on his shoulders. "Who you used to be?" she asked softly. Julian looked away. "Someone I prefer to forget." But Claire wouldn't give up so easily. For 3 days, he had tried to get closer to her. Now it was her turn to try to understand him. "Why are you doing this for us?" "Because," said Julian, looking her directly in the eyes, "for the first time in 20 years, I've found someone who reminds me of who I really am." Julian insisted on paying Fernanda's school expenses, despite Claire's protests. "It's a loan," he had said, although both knew it was a lie. "You can pay me back when you can." In the following days, a strange dance was established between them. Julian created pretexts to cross paths with Claire during work hours, documents that needed to be delivered personally, meetings that ended coincidentally when she arrived to clean. Claire, in turn, struggled between overwhelming gratitude and the fear of what that proximity could mean. It was on a Friday that everything changed. Claire was cleaning the meeting room on the 40th floor when she heard raised voices coming from Julian's office. It wasn't her habit to eavesdrop on conversations, but the aggressive tone made her stop. "You can't ignore me forever, Julian." The voice was female, shrill. "I'm your sister, not a stranger." "Vivian, we've already discussed this." Julian's voice was tense, controlled. "I'm not going to finance another one of your schemes." "Schemes? It's my future that's at stake. If you don't lend me the money, I'm going to lose everything." Claire stepped away discreetly, but couldn't avoid hearing what followed. "You've already lost everything 3 times, Vivian, and every time I covered your losses enough." "Oh yeah? And what do you think would happen if certain people knew how you really got the money to start the company?" The silence that followed was as tense as a steel cable about to snap. "You wouldn't dare, wouldn't I? 20 years keeping your dirty little secret, Julian. 20 years being the good sister who doesn't tell anyone how the great philanthropist Julian Vance financed his first business." Claire stepped further away, her heart beating fast. She shouldn't be hearing this, but her feet seemed glued to the floor. "2 million, Julian. That's all I need to start over? Chicken feed for you? And then, how much will you need next time? 3 million, 5. There won't be a next time." Julian's laugh was bitter. "Like last time? And the time before that?" "Julian, please." Vivian's voice changed, became pleading. "I'm your sister. You promised Mom you'd take care of me." "I have. For 20 years I've taken care of you. But I can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." The argument continued for a few more minutes before Claire heard footsteps approaching. She ran to the nearest bathroom, closing the door just in time to see a blonde woman leaving the elevator, clearly agitated. She was elegant, well-dressed, but there was something desperate about her gestures. When Claire thought it was safe to leave, she found Julian standing by the window of his office, his hands resting on the glass, his shoulders hunched in a way she had never seen. She should have left. She should have pretended she hadn't witnessed anything. But something in the way he was standing there, alone and defeated, made her knock softly on the door. "Come in," he said without turning around. "Mr. Vance, I saw your sister leaving. Are you all right?" Julian turned around slowly. His eyes were tired, older than she had ever seen them. "You heard." It wasn't a question. Claire lowered her eyes, ashamed. "It wasn't on purpose, sir. I was cleaning, and you don't need to justify yourself." Julian walked to the desk, letting himself fall heavily into the chair. "It's probably better that someone knows the truth." Claire hesitated. "Sir?" Julian looked at her for a long moment, as if he were making an irreversible decision. "Sit down, Claire. There's no need, sir." "I shouldn't." "Please." Something in his voice made her obey. She sat on the edge of the chair, her hands clasped in her lap. "What do you know about how I started my company?" Julian asked. "Only what everyone knows. That you used a family inheritance." Julian laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Family inheritance. That's the pretty version." He got up and went to the bar in the corner of the room, pouring himself a whiskey. "Want something?" "No, thank you." Julian returned to the chair, the glass in his hands. "My parents died when I was 17. Car accident. They left debts, not an inheritance. Vivian was 13. She was in boarding school. I could have put her up for adoption, simplified my life." Claire remained silent, sensing that he needed to talk. "But I promised my mother in the hospital that I would take care of her. So I dropped out of school, got 2 jobs, 3 sometimes. Cleaned offices at night, worked in a warehouse day, did odd jobs on weekends." Claire felt her stomach churn. The story was too familiar. For 5 years it was like that. Vivian in boarding school, me killing myself working to pay the tuition, the allowance, everything. When she turned 18, I thought I could finally breathe. But she wanted college, wanted to become an actress, wanted everything I could never give her. Julian took a sip of the whiskey, his hands trembling slightly. "That's when I met a guy. Russian, kind of shady. He needed someone to invest his money in legitimate businesses. 50% of the profit for me, 50 for him. Everything very simple, very clean on paper. Claire's heart stopped. Mr. Vance, money laundering, Claire. I spent 3 years laundering dirty money through small businesses that I set up and closed down. I managed to raise enough money to start Vance Technology and never have to do that again. The silence in the room was deafening. Claire looked at the man in front of her, the respected philanthropist, the admired CEO, and saw a desperate young man who had made terrible choices out of love. And your sister knows about this? Vivian always knew. Back then, she loved the extra money, the nice clothes, the expensive college. But now, Julian laughed bitterly, now she uses it against me. Why are you telling me this? Julian looked her directly in the eyes. Because for the first time in 20 years, I found someone who might understand why I did what I did. Someone who knows what it's like to sacrifice everything for a person you love. Claire felt tears burning her eyes. I understand, she whispered. You really understand? Even knowing that I'm a criminal? You're not a criminal. Claire's voice came out firm, surprising them both. You were a scared boy trying to protect your sister. Julian got up abruptly, going to where she was sitting. Claire stood up too, and suddenly they were very close, too close. Claire, he raised his hand, hesitating before gently touching her face. You have no idea what you mean to me. Mr. Vance, we can't, but she didn't move away. Julian, my name is Julian. Julian, she repeated, her voice barely audible. He leaned in, and for a moment it seemed he was going to kiss her. Claire closed her eyes, her heart racing, all her fears and reasons fading before the intensity of the moment. That's when the door opened. Julian, I forgot my... Oh! Vivian was standing in the doorway, her eyes going from Julian to Claire, a slow and dangerous smile forming on her lips. Julian moved away from Claire immediately, but it was too late. Sorry to interrupt, said Vivian, her voice sweetly venomous. I didn't know you had company. Claire stepped further away, her face burning with shame. I need to go, she murmured, heading quickly for the door. Not so fast, honey, said Vivian, blocking her way. We haven't been introduced. I'm Vivian Vance, Julian's sister. Claire, she said softly, trying to pass. Claire! Claire what? Alencar, Julian replied sharply. Now get out of her way. Alencar, Vivian savored the name. How interesting. And you work here at the company, Claire? Claire nodded quickly, still trying to pass. Vivian, enough, Julian growled. What is your role, Claire? Secretary? Assistant? Something in... marketing? Claire's silence was answer enough. Vivian laughed, a sound that made Claire cringe. Ah, I see. Well, Julian, that explains a lot. Claire finally managed to get past Vivian and ran to the door. When she turned around one last time, she saw Julian looking at her with an expression of absolute despair. Claire, wait! But she had already left, leaving Julian alone with his sister and the overwhelming weight of what had just happened. Vivian poured herself a glass of wine from Julian's bar, smiling smugly. 2 million, little brother, she said cheerfully. And maybe I'll consider forgetting what I just saw. Julian paid the 2 million to Vivian, but he knew that was just the beginning. His sister had tasted blood, and blood always attracted more blood. Claire, in turn, tried to return to the invisibility that had always protected her. She arrived earlier, left later, avoided any hallway where Julian might pass. But it was impossible to ignore the weight of his gaze when their paths crossed, or the way her heart raced when she heard his voice. 3 weeks after the incident, Claire was cleaning the women's bathroom on the 30th floor when she heard familiar voices approaching. I can't believe he's stooping to this level, said one of the executive secretaries. I know, Marcia. The Julian Vance we know would never get involved with a... Well, you know. Claire stopped scrubbing the mirror, the blood freezing in her veins. Vivian told my cousin, who works in finance. Said she caught them in his office, almost kissing. A cleaning lady, Regina. A cleaning lady! Imagine the scandal if this leaks to the press. His family must be hysterical. The most eligible man in the country getting involved with someone from cleaning. It's degrading. Claire cowered inside the stall, trying to breathe silently. And her, have you seen her? She's even kind of pretty, but obviously she's after his money. These women always know how to seduce powerful men. Poor Julian. Men sometimes think with the wrong part of their bodies, right? Good thing Vivian is keeping an eye out. Someone needs to protect him from these gold diggers. The voices faded away, leaving Claire alone with the echo of the cruel words. Her hands were shaking so much that she dropped the cleaner bottle, which shattered on the marble floor. As she picked up the shards, Claire saw herself reflected in the pieces of glass. Fragmented, broken, small. Maybe the women were right. Maybe she was just an illusion that Julian would soon overcome. The next morning, Claire found an envelope slipped under the door of her apartment. Inside, a grainy photo taken from a security camera showing her and Julian in his office, the moment when he had touched her face. On the back, a message written in delicate feminine handwriting. I have many photos like this. It would be a shame if they got to the newspapers, don't you think? Meet me at the diner on Clark Street at 3 p.m. today. Come alone. Buvie. Claire arrived at the diner 15 minutes late, her hands sweating. Vivian was at a table in the back, elegant in an expensive suit, distractedly messing with her cell phone. I thought you weren't coming, said Vivian when Claire approached. What do you want? Straight to the point. I like that. Vivian gestured for Claire to sit down. Want some coffee? No? Well, more for me. Claire remained standing. Just say it. All right. Vivian pulled a folder from her designer bag. These are all the photos I managed to get from the company's security systems. My brother may be smart, but he's not the only one with useful contacts. Claire looked at the photos spread out on the table, she and Julian talking in the hallway, him waiting for her in the parking lot, the two of them walking together to the car. Seen out of context, they looked much more intimate than they really were. I imagine the press could create some interesting stories with these images, Vivian continued. Billionaire CEO in sordid affair with cleaning lady. Class differences always sell well. We're not having an affair, said Claire, her voice barely audible. Oh, honey, that doesn't matter. What matters is the appearance. And you two look like you're head over heels. Vivian smiled coldly. It's almost touching, if it weren't so convenient for me. How much do you want? From you, nothing. You don't have any money that would interest me. Vivian leaned forward. I want you to disappear from my brother's life. Claire blinked, confused. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Vanish. Resign, move to another city, go wherever you want. Just make sure Julian never sees you again. And if I don't do that... Vivian picked up her cell phone and showed it to Claire. On the screen was the number of a well-known tabloid TV show. Then tomorrow these photos will be on the air. Julian Vance's Dirty Secret would be a good title, don't you think? And I'm sure they'd be very interested in investigating his life further. Who knows what other secrets they might discover? Claire's blood ran cold. She was referring to Julian's past, to the money laundering. You would destroy your own brother? My brother has destroyed me several times, honey. Denied me money, humiliated me, treated me like a burden. Now it's my turn. Vivian put away the photos. But that can be avoided. Just get out of the picture. And then? Then Julian goes back to being the rational man he always was. Finds a suitable wife from his social class and lives happily ever after. And I gain a grateful sister-in-law who understands the importance of supporting the family. Claire sat down finally, her legs weak. You can't force me to. I can and I will. Vivian leaned closer. But let me make it more interesting. Your little sister, Fernanda, 16 years old, isn't she? Studying at St. Benedict High? Claire's world stopped. How do you... I researched you. It wasn't difficult. Smart girl, your sister. It would be a shame if something happened to her scholarship, or if certain people found out about her little problems with fake schoolwork. I imagine universities are pretty strict with candidates who have a history of academic fraud. Claire stood up abruptly. Don't you dare, or what? What exactly are you going to do? Vivian laughed. Honey, you're a cleaning lady from a low-income neighborhood. I'm Vivian Vance. In what world do you think you have the power to threaten me? The truth of the words hit Claire like a slap. She really had no power at all. She was exactly as the secretaries had said, a gold digger trying to climb the social ladder through a rich man. You have 48 hours, said Vivian, standing up and leaving a $50 bill on the table. For your coffee. Consider it a severance bonus. That night, Claire arrived home to find Fernanda studying at the kitchen table, surrounded by books and notes. The sight of her sister concentrated, fighting for a better future, was like a stab in the chest. "How was work?" asked Fernanda without looking up. "Normal," lied Claire, sitting on the bed. "And school?" "Good. I'm preparing for the college entrance exams. The literature teacher said I have a real chance of getting into Northwestern." Fernanda finally looked at her, smiling. "Can you imagine, Claire? An Alencar at Northwestern?" Claire forced a smile. "That would be amazing, and all thanks to you. Do your sacrifices." Fernanda got up and hugged her sister. "I know you always wanted to study too. When I graduate and get a good job, you'll be able to go back to school. I promise." Claire closed her eyes, breathing in the smell of Fernanda's cheap shampoo, feeling the weight of the love and responsibility she had carried for so many years. There was no choice. There never had been. The next day, Claire wrote her resignation letter. Simple, direct, without explanations. She handed it to Mrs. Marta before she could regret it. "But why, Claire?" "You're our best employee." "Personal problems," was all she could say. She decided she wouldn't talk to Julian. It would be easier that way for both of them. But when she was leaving the building for the last time, he appeared in the lobby. "Claire, Mrs. Marta told me you resigned. Why?" She avoided looking directly at him. "I found another opportunity." "What opportunity?" "Where? It doesn't matter." Julian moved closer. "Of course it matters. To me it matters." Claire finally looked at him, and Julian saw something in her eyes that alarmed him. Fear, sadness. "Farewell, Julian," she said softly, and it was the first time she had used his name without hesitation. "Thank you for everything. But you can't continue." "Because of what happened in the office." "Because of Vivian?" Claire didn't answer, but her expression was answer enough. "Claire, don't let her intimidate us. We can face this together. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Do you really think we're a we? Look around you, Julian. Look at you, at me. We're from different worlds. We always have been. That doesn't matter." "Yes, it does." Claire's voice rose, attracting curious glances. She lowered her tone. "It matters to your family, to your business, to your reputation. And it matters to me too." Julian reached out to her, but Claire recoiled. "Don't make this harder than it already is," she whispered. "Please." And with that, Claire Alencar walked out of Julian Vance's life, leaving him alone in the marble lobby of his own empire, surrounded by people but more isolated than he had ever been. Vivian, watching everything from a safe distance, smiled smugly and dialed a number on her cell phone. "Hello, darling. It's Vivian. About that dinner you wanted to arrange for Julian to meet your daughter. I think it's a great time to insist on the matter." 2 weeks had passed since Claire had left Vance Technology. She had found work at a smaller company, cleaning commercial offices for an even smaller salary, but that at least guaranteed that Fernanda would remain in school. Nights were spent sleepless, trying to forget the smell of Julian's cologne, the sound of his voice saying her name. Julian, in turn, had immersed himself in work with an intensity that worried even Marcus. Consecutive meetings, unnecessary business trips, anything to avoid thinking about Claire's absence. Vivian had arranged 3 different dinners for him to meet interesting people. All daughters of established families, all perfectly suitable, all completely empty. It was on a Thursday that the world collapsed. Claire was making breakfast when Fernanda turned on the television to the morning news. The name Julian Vance in the headline made Claire drop the mug on the floor. In an exclusive report, "We have discovered documents that prove billionaire Julian Vance's involvement in money laundering schemes early in his business career." The screen showed old photos of Julian, bank documents, and then the photo of the 2 of them in the office. Sources close to Vance also reveal that he was having an intimate relationship with a cleaning lady at his company, who was allegedly his main informant about the suspicious financial transactions. Claire felt the world spin. On television, a blonde reporter spoke authoritatively about the scandal rocking the corporate world. The employee, identified as Claire Alencar, 28, residing in a low-income neighborhood, allegedly used her privileged position to collect information about Vance's operations. In a clear attempt at blackmail, Fernanda's voice was distant, as if coming from another planet. "Claire, isn't that you on television?" The screen now showed a photo of Claire leaving the Vance Technology building, clearly taken without her knowledge. The caption read, "Claire Alencar, from cleaning lady to blackmailer." The phone started ringing, then the cell phone, then someone knocked on the door. "Don't answer," whispered Claire, but it was too late. Fernanda had already opened the door to a man with a camera and a woman with a microphone. "Ms. Alencar, we're from Celebrity Buzz. We'd like to hear your side of the story about your relationship with Julian Vance." Claire pushed Fernanda back inside the house and slammed the door in the reporters' faces. But they didn't leave. In a few minutes, there were 3 television crews on the sidewalk of her humble home. At the Vance Technology office, Julian watched the same news report with an expression of absolute disbelief. Marcus was at his side, the phone ringing incessantly. "How did they get these documents?" murmured Julian. "So the press is saying that Claire leaked everything?" "Impossible!" Julian's voice came out firm, but something cold was settling in his chest. Marcus showed a second report on the tablet. "Sir, they have more photos and some recorded conversations." Julian took the tablet. On the screen, an audio recording began to play. It was Claire's voice, but the words were like knives. "Or he trusts me completely. He doesn't suspect a thing. It's pathetic how powerful men become vulnerable when they think a woman cares about them." Julian sat down heavily. "Stop this! Sir, there's more! I said stop it!" But the words were already echoing in his mind. The voice was Claire's, there was no doubt. But how? When had she said that? The answer came when Vivian entered his office, feigning concern. "Julian, darling, I just saw the news." "What a terrible situation." Julian looked at her with empty eyes. "It was you." "Me? How can you think that?" "I'm your sister. You recorded her. You set all this up." Vivian sighed dramatically. "Julian, I tried to warn you about this woman. I tried to protect you, but you didn't want to listen. Lies. Is that so?" Vivian pulled out her cell phone. "Then how do you explain this?" On the screen, a bank statement. Claire's account had received a deposit of $50,000 the previous week. The sender was identified as VM Consulting, the initials of Vivian Marcella Vance. "Where did you get this?" "I have my contacts, Julian. The question is, why did your little girlfriend receive $50,000 from a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands?" Julian felt the ground disappearing beneath his feet. The deposit was real. The date was after Claire's resignation, and she hadn't told him anything. "Do you still think she was innocent?" asked Vivian softly. Poor Julian. Always been too naive for these things. Julian's phone rang. It was his press advisor. "Julian, we need to talk urgently. The situation is getting out of control. The company's shares have fallen 15% this morning alone." Meanwhile, at the apartment in the low-income neighborhood, Claire was barricaded with Fernanda, ignoring the knocks on the door and the shouts of the reporters. Her cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers, curious neighbors, even classmates from Fernanda's school. "Claire, explain to me what's happening." Fernanda was crying. "They're saying you blackmail rich people, that you lied about everything." "I didn't do anything, Fer. You have to believe me." "Then how do they have these recordings? How do they know so much about your life?" Claire didn't know how to answer. How had they managed to record conversations she never had? How was her name being destroyed on national television? The landline rang. Claire hesitated, but something made her answer. "Claire?" It was Julian's voice, but cold as she had never heard it. "Julian, thank God." "You have to believe me, I didn't." $50,000, Claire. The silence that followed was deafening. What? $50,000 deposited in your account last week. Do you want to explain to me where this money came from? Claire felt the world spin. "What money?" "Julian, I didn't receive any money." "Stop lying." His voice exploded through the phone. I have the statement here in front of me. $50,000 from VM Consulting. You sold my personal information and you still have the nerve to pretend innocence. Julian, please, you have to listen to me. I listened. I heard you talking about how powerful men become vulnerable. I heard you laughing at how I trusted you. What recording? I never said those things. Your voice, Claire. It was your voice. Claire was crying now, desperate. Julian, someone is setting this up. Your sister, she threatened me. Of course. Now it's Vivian's fault. Julian's voice was icy. There's always someone to blame, isn't there? It's never your fault. Please, don't call me again, Claire. My lawyers will contact you if we need anything. The line went dead. Claire looked at the mute phone, then at Fernanda, who was watching her with a mixture of fear and confusion. Outside, the reporters continued shouting questions, cameras filming the windows of her home. In her luxurious apartment, Vivian toasted with champagne, watching the news with satisfaction. Her plan had worked perfectly. The audio had been created with voice synthesis technology, expensive but effective. The bank deposit in the name of a shell company had been her masterpiece. Julian was destroyed, Claire was demoralized, and she finally had the control she had always desired. She picked up the phone and dialed a number. Hello, darling. It's Vivian. I think now is the perfect time for Julian to meet your daughter. He's in need of consolation. The next morning, the newspapers splashed photos of Claire being hounded by reporters, Julian leaving his building with a grim face, and sensational headlines about the biggest scandal of the year. Claire Alencar had become the most hated woman in the country overnight, and Julian Vance believed that the only person who had ever truly known him had betrayed him for the most predictable thing in the world: money. Everything was lost. For 3 days, Claire didn't leave the house. The television crews eventually dispersed, but the neighbors continued whispering, pointing, casting accusing glances. Fernanda had missed school. Impossible to face her classmates and their cruel questions. It was on the 4th day that Claire made a decision. I'm not going to hide anymore, she said to Fernanda, who was lying in bed, depressed. If I'm going to be destroyed, at least it's going to be fighting. Claire, maybe it's better to let it pass. Soon another scandal will appear and people will forget. No. Claire got up for the first time in days, looking at herself in the mirror. She saw a thin woman with deep dark circles under her eyes, but there was something new in her eyes: determination. Someone did this to me, Fer. Someone planned my destruction. And I'm going to find out who. Claire's first stop was the bank. She waited 2 hours to be attended, ignoring the whispers of the other customers who recognized her. I need information about a deposit in my account, she said to the manager, a middle-aged man who could barely hide his discomfort. Ms. Alencar, you understand that? I understand that my account was breached and someone deposited money that I didn't authorize. That's a crime. The manager, Mr. Bennett, consulted the system. The deposit was made via international transfer from the company VM Consulting, based in the Cayman Islands. And can I track this company? That would be complicated. Offshore companies have specific protections. Claire leaned forward. Mr. Bennett, do you have daughters? The man nodded, confused. Imagine that someone destroyed their reputation, planted false evidence to ruin their lives. What would you do? The manager hesitated, then sighed. I'll see what I can find out unofficially. The second stop was a cyber cafe in Wicker Park. Claire had researched voice synthesis on the internet, the technology that could explain the false recordings. A young man with colored hair and multiple piercings attended to her. What you're showing on TV is an audio deepfake, said Lucas, the technician, after listening to the recording. You can tell by the microcuts and the lack of natural breathing. Can you prove that? I can analyze the audio, show the technical inconsistencies. But it will cost. Claire looked at the last $100 in her wallet. How much? For you, nothing. I hate when they use our technology to destroy innocent people. While Lucas worked on the analysis, Claire went to her third stop, the company where Vivian had worked before becoming an entrepreneur. She had gotten the information through a simple internet search. The receptionist at the advertising agency was a young woman, not much older than Fernanda. Vivian Vance? Oh, we remember her. The girl lowered her voice conspiratorially. She worked here for 6 months until she was fired. Why? Fraud. She created fake accounts to divert funds from clients. We almost closed because of her. The receptionist looked around nervously, but that was hushed up. Her brother paid a millionaire indemnity to keep everything secret. Claire felt a spark of hope. Do you have documents? Evidence? I can't give you anything official, but the girl scribbled a name and number on a piece of paper. Talk to Cynthia. She was an auditor here when it all happened. She left the company after she found out they were going to cover it up. On the way back home, Claire passed by Vance Technology. She didn't have the courage to go in, but she stayed watching the activity from outside. That's when she saw Marcus, Julian's assistant, going out for lunch. She took a deep breath and approached him. Marcus, I'm Claire Alencar. Marcus stopped, clearly uncomfortable. Claire, I shouldn't be talking to you. Please, just 5 minutes. Marcus looked around, then led her to a discreet cafe 2 blocks away. Do you believe I did that? Asked Claire directly. Marcus hesitated. The evidence. Forget the evidence. You watched me for 3 years. You saw how I worked, how I behaved. In your heart, do you believe I would be capable of doing that? Marcus was silent for a long moment. No, he said finally. I don't believe it. Then help me. How? Tell me about Vivian. About her relationship with Julian. Marcus sighed deeply. She's always been complicated. Since I've been working for Julian, she appears from time to time asking for money. He always pays, but he's never happy about it. And after I left the company, she started showing up more. Brought several friends for Julian to meet. Insisted that he needed a suitable companion. Marcus stopped as if he were deciding something. Claire, there's something that might interest you. What? Vivian has access to the building security system. Julian gave it to her years ago when she was helping with the decoration of a new floor. He never revoked the access. Claire's heart raced. That means that she may have accessed the camera recordings and more. She knows someone at the digital security company that takes care of our systems. Marcus wrote a name on a napkin. This guy has been working there for 10 years. If someone messed with our systems, he'll know. That night, Claire was in her kitchen organizing everything she had discovered when Fernanda approached. Claire, I found something strange. Fernanda showed a news report on her cell phone. Remember that woman who spoke to the reporters? The one who said she saw you seducing Julian? Claire nodded. She was one of the witnesses who had appeared in the news. She works at a public relations firm, the same firm that represents the Vance family in crises. Claire's eyes widened. Are you sure? I am. And more. She posted a photo in an expensive restaurant on the same night she gave the interview, with the caption, celebrating a job well done. For the first time in a week, Claire smiled. You're a genius. What are we going to do now? Now we're going to put all the pieces together and assemble a complete dossier. Claire spread all the papers on the table. We have the technical analysis of the false recording, the connection of Vivian with previous frauds, bought witnesses, unauthorized access to security systems, and the bank deposit. Mr. Bennett called me earlier. VM Consulting was created on the same day the money was deposited, and the IP address for the company's creation, from a computer registered in Vivian Vance's name. Fernanda looked at her sister with admiration. You got proof of everything? Almost everything. I still need one final piece. Claire picked up the phone. Marcus, it's me. I need you to arrange a meeting with Julian. Claire, he won't want to see you. He will if you tell him I have information about who really leaked his documents. A silence on the other end of the line. What information? Marcus, is your loyalty with Julian or with his family? With Julian. Always has been. Then help me save him. Because if I'm right about what I've discovered, Vivian didn't stop there. She's going to keep destroying his life until she gets what she wants. What does she want? Claire looked at all the evidence spread out on the table. total control of the company, of the money, of his life. And for that, she needs him to be completely isolated, with no one to trust. Like you. Like me. Marcus was silent for a long moment. There's an event on Friday. The Vance Foundation's charity gala. It'll be at the Drake Hotel. Julian will be there, and Vivian too. Marcus, what do you need me to do? Claire took a deep breath. I need to get into that event. And I need 5 minutes alone with Julian before Vivian realizes what's happening. That's impossible. Maximum security, closed guest list. Marcus, Julian's life is in your hands. Vivian won't stop. She's going to keep manipulating, blackmailing, destroying until he has nothing and no one left. Until he's completely dependent on her. A long silence. Friday, 8 o'clock. Service entrance. You'll have 15 minutes before security notices you're missing. Claire closed her eyes, her heart beating fast. Thank you, Claire. If you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong, Marcus. And on Friday, everyone will know the truth. After she hung up, Claire looked at Fernanda, who was watching her with a mixture of fear and pride. Are you sure about this? Asked her younger sister. I'm sure I can't live the rest of my life as a liar and blackmailer. If I'm going to fall, I'm going to fall fighting. Claire picked up the broken mirror she kept in a drawer, the same one that had broken in the office bathroom weeks ago. In the shards, she saw fragments of herself, but for the first time she didn't see herself broken. She saw a woman who had discovered that it was worth fighting for her own truth. The Vance Foundation's charity gala was in full swing. The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel teemed with the most important names in the city. Businessmen, politicians, celebrities, all wearing their best clothes and perfunctory smiles. Julian circulated among the groups of guests, greeting them mechanically, but his eyes seemed like glass. Claire entered through the kitchen wearing the borrowed uniform of a waitress, her hair pulled back in a high bun, glasses borrowed from Fernanda changing her face. She carried a tray of champagne and an envelope with all the evidence she had collected. Marcus met her near the service bar. 15 minutes, he whispered. Julian is on the second-floor balcony. Vivian is busy with the Carters, trying to arrange an engagement. Claire climbed the stairs discreetly, her heart beating like a drum. On the balcony, she found Julian alone, looking at the black sea through the glass. Julian. He turned around sharply, and for a moment his face showed pure relief before hardening again. How did you get in here? It doesn't matter. Claire approached, extending the envelope. You need to see this. I don't want to see anything your sister framed me. The words came out firm, cutting off his protests. She created the false recordings, planted the money in my account, paid witnesses. It's all here. Julian hesitated, then took the envelope. As he read, Claire saw his face changing, confusion, disbelief, then a cold anger growing in his eyes. The technical analysis of the audio shows that it was synthesized, explained Claire quickly. The company that deposited the money was created on her computer. The witnesses work for your family's public relations firm. Julian, she planned everything. Why? His voice came out hoarse. Why would she do this? Control. With you isolated, emotionally destroyed, she becomes your only family, your only ally. And with your reputation shaken, you would depend even more on her to rebuild your image. Julian closed his eyes, his hands trembling slightly. I believed her. I believed that you had reasons to believe. The evidence was convincing. Claire, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have... Julian. She gently touched his arm. You were manipulated by someone you had trusted for 20 years. That's not your fault. They looked at each other for a long moment, and Claire saw that the man in front of her was broken, vulnerable in a way she had never witnessed. What do we do now? He asked. That's when they heard footsteps on the stairs. Vivian appeared on the balcony, elegant in a navy blue dress, but her expression changed drastically when she saw Claire. Well, the blackmailer is back. Vivian smiled, but there was venom in her voice. Julian, darling, you shouldn't be talking to her. You still have criminal charges pending. Vivian. Julian's voice was different, cold as steel. I just read some very interesting things. What things? Vivian tried to maintain a casual tone, but Claire saw the panic starting in her eyes. Julian raised one of the documents. VM Consulting, created on your computer on the same day, $50,000 was deposited in Claire's account. That's ridiculous. Anyone can forge. And the recordings. Julian raised the technical report. Voice synthesis, Vivian. You hired someone to create false recordings of Claire. Vivian laughed, but the sound was shrill. Julian, you're being manipulated again. This woman is desperate, inventing absurd theories. Then explain this. Claire showed the last document. Report from the advertising agency where you worked. Fraud, diversion of funds, dismissal for cause. All hushed up by your brother. Vivian's face paled. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Julian approached his sister, and for the first time in her life, Vivian recoiled before him. I can prove that you have access to our security systems, that you paid false witnesses, that you created a shell company to implicate Claire. So what? Vivian threw away the mask, her voice becoming venomous. Do you think anyone will care? She's a cleaning lady, Julian. A cleaning lady from a low-income neighborhood who was destroying your reputation. She was saving me. Julian's voice echoed through the balcony, charged with an emotion that made Vivian take another step back. Saving me from loneliness, from coldness, from the empty life I was living. And you destroyed that because you couldn't stand to see me happy. Happy. Vivian laughed with desperation. Happy with a woman who was obviously after your money. She never asked for anything. Julian exploded. Never wanted anything. She gave me a birthday present made with the little money she had, cared about me when not even my own family remembered I existed. Vivian looked from Julian to Claire, seeing that she had lost control of the situation. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. I just wanted to protect you, Julian. Protect our family, our name. Lies. Claire spoke for the first time since Vivian had arrived. You wanted to control him. Like you tried to control the agency where you worked. Like you tried to control every situation in your life. But control isn't love, Vivian. It's prison. Shut up! Vivian turned to Claire, her eyes flaming. You have no right to talk about family. You're nothing. You came from nothing. You have nothing to offer. She offered me something that money can't buy, said Julian calmly. Acceptance, understanding, true love. Vivian looked at her brother with an expression of disbelief. You're really going to choose her over your own family? Woo! You chose to betray me, to manipulate me, to destroy my happiness. You chose not to be my family anymore. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared, followed by 2 security guards. Mr. Vance, the guests are asking about you. Julian looked at Claire, then at Vivian, and made a decision that would change everything. Marcus, summon the press that's here. I want to make a statement. Julian, don't, whispered Vivian. Think about what you're doing. I'm thinking. For the first time in months, I'm thinking clearly. Half an hour later, the main ballroom was silent. Julian was on the small stage, Claire by his side, while television cameras recorded every word. A week ago, my reputation was attacked by information that seemed compromising, began Julian, his voice firm. Today, I discovered that I was the victim of an orchestrated campaign of defamation and manipulation. A murmur ran through the ballroom. Claire Alencar, the woman by my side, was falsely accused of blackmail and leaking information. The evidence against her was fabricated through voice synthesis technology, unauthorized bank transfers, and bought witnesses. The cameras swiveled to focus on Claire, who was visibly nervous but kept her head held high. The person responsible for this campaign, Julian took a deep breath, is my sister Vivian Vance, who tried to destroy the reputation of an innocent woman because she didn't approve of our relationship. The ballroom exploded in exclamations of shock. Vivian, who was in the back, tried to leave discreetly, but the security guards had already been instructed to stop her. Claire Alencar, continued Julian, turning to her, taught me that the value of a person isn't in their bank account or their social position. It's in their integrity, their kindness, their ability to love without interest. He took Claire's hand, and she felt the firmness and warmth she had missed. For that reason, in front of all of you, I want to say that I love this woman. I love her strength, her dignity, her ability to forgive, even when she was brutally attacked. And I want to ask, Julian knelt down, taking a ring out of his pocket, Claire Alencar, will you marry me? The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Claire looked at the man kneeling before her, at the hundreds of people watching, at the cameras broadcasting live. She thought of Fernanda watching at home, of the neighbors who had judged her, of everyone who had doubted her. Julian, she said softly, stand up. He obeyed, confused. You don't need to kneel for me. You never needed to. Claire took his face in her hands. We are equals. Two people who met and recognized each other. Two people who know that true love knows no social class. She smiled, and it was like the sun rising. Yes, Julian Vance, I accept to marry you. Their kiss was accompanied by an explosion of applause, camera flashes, and tears of emotion. In the back of the ballroom, Vivian was discreetly escorted out by the security guards, her expression a mixture of defeat and impotent fury. 6 months later, Claire was in the garden of the mansion she now called home, playing with Fernanda, who had been accepted into Northwestern with a full scholarship. Julian watched the two of them from the balcony, Marcus at his side, reviewing the day's schedule. The company's shares have completely recovered, said Marcus. And the Vance Foundation had the highest number of donations in history after your public statement. And Vivian, indicted for slander, defamation, and wire fraud. The lawyers think she'll get at least 2 years. Julian nodded without joy or sadness. Vivian had made her choices. Julian? Claire approached, Fernanda running after her. Four wants to know if she can bring her boyfriend for dinner. What boyfriend? Julian feigned sternness, making Fernanda laugh. He's from her pre-med program. He seems like a good guy. If Claire approves, I approve, said Julian, hugging his wife. Later, when they were alone in their room, Claire found the note she had written to Julian on the first day, still kept in the drawer of his nightstand. You still have this? It's my favorite reminder, said Julian, hugging her from behind. The day someone cared about me for real. And now I know that love has no price, no class, no appearance. It only has truth. Claire turned in his arms, looking into the eyes of the man who had chosen to fight for her when the whole world doubted her. I love you, Julian Vance. I love you, Claire Vance. And as they kissed, they both knew that they had found something more valuable than all the money in the world. A love that had survived the storms and emerged stronger than ever. Outside, the city stretched out in all directions. The low-income neighborhood and the Gold Coast, the outskirts and the upscale neighborhoods, the worlds that once seemed as distant as different stars. But in the hearts of Claire and Julian, there was no distance at all. Just love, true, lasting, and infinite.